April 2001. I still work at Frame Art Galleries. I still have no idea what was going on in my life in April of 2001. So we're just going to jump into the books that I read. I assume not much was going on considering how much I read in April of 2001. And the first book was right here, The Simpsons and Philosophy, The Doe of Homer. This is edited by William Irwin, Mark T. Conrad, and Aeon J. Scoble. Aeon. Not sure how you pronounce his name. So this is part of the Pop Culture and Philosophy Library from Open Court. There are two publishers that have pop culture and philosophy books. Open Court, I think, has the most, and we're the first, but don't quote me on that. It's one of the earliest ones. As a matter of fact, it is volume 2 from Open Court, and it explores philosophy using The Simpsons to help sort of explain philosophical ideas, and it uses philosophy to dig into the show The Simpsons and the different characters. So it's back and forth, one essay, and it's a collection of essays from different writers, different philosophers and things, professors and such. Anyway, so one essay might use an episode of The Simpsons to explain this particular philosophical school of thought. And then the very next essay might use this particular philosophical school of thought to analyze and dig into an episode of The Simpsons or the characters. I really like these pop culture and philosophy books. I have a bunch of them. We're going to see a bunch of them coming up throughout the videos. But The Simpsons and philosophy. First book I read in April of 2001. And the only book that I'll be showing you, even though I have some of these other ones. Second book I read in April 2001 is Pot Shot by Robert B. Parker. And this is a fish out of water book for Spencer, because the action takes place in Pot Shot, Arizona. It was a mining town back in the day. Now it's a place for the rich to get away. But there's a gang led by someone named Preacher who is preying on this town. And let's see, I have notes here somewhere. Here we go. Mary Lou Buckman hires Spencer because her husband has been murdered. She thinks Preacher and his gang did it. She hires Spencer. Spencer puts together a crew that includes Hawk and Vinnie Morris, I think is his name, and some others to go to Pot Shot and clean up the town. So I don't remember too much about this. It sounds like a pretty good one. It's a later one. I think it's 28. The 28th Spencer book, I think, is the number that I saw. But it sounds like my kind of thing, taking Spencer out of his comfort zone and almost a Seven Samurai kind of story. Maybe I'll reread it and see what I think. But that's Pot Shot by Robert B. Parker. Next up, we have Zod Wallop by William Browning Spencer. And this is, it's about a guy named Harry Gainsborough, who was an author of children's books. He's kind of retired now. But it seems that perhaps the world that he made up and the characters and the monsters and everything are sort of slipping into the real world. There's a mental patient who tells Harry that it's all real. Harry and this guy met when they were both in the mental hospital. It's all sorts of craziness, no pun intended or insult intended. But yeah, real world. Is it real? Is it Harry's mental illness coming back? What's going on with this the world of these children's books possibly slip into reality. A wild William Browning Spencer book. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as Resume with Monsters, but what are you going to do? Next, we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Faith Trials, Volume 1 by James Lawrence. And this is a novelization of 4 episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer that feature Faith the Slayer, the Vampire Slayer. Those 4 episodes are Faith, Hope, and Trick. That's 1 episode. Bad Girls, Revelations, and Consequences. So Faith, Hope, and Trick is the episode that introduces Faith. We find out that she is a Watcherless Slayer from Nolens, I believe, or somewhere in Louisiana, I think. But she's come up to Sunnydale, tracking the vampire that killed her Watcher. She became activated as a Slayer when Kendra, spoilers for this old show, when Kendra the Vampire Slayer was killed. Faith was activated, and she's, bad girl, got this attitude, everybody likes her. It's a fun episode, introduces an interesting character, one of the few. I'm really torn on Eliza Dushku. I think she's great as Faith. I like her in the movie The New Guy, but she's also in some stuff where I think she's just terrible. Anyway, Bad Girls is the next one, and I believe this is... I might have these in the wrong order. I feel like this is the one where a new Watcher is sent for Faith. It does not go well, and spoilers again, the Watcher turns out to be evil. Blah, 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 stuff happens. And Faith's trying to, rub off her bad girlness on Buffy. Then we have Revelations. I feel like these are, I don't know, but this is where Faith accidentally kills somebody and basically slips completely into the dark side. Consequences, she tries to frame Buffy for the murder, it's an accidental death, but she killed a human, but tries to pin it on Buffy and completely just goes over to the dark side, starts working for the mayor, who's the big bad of season 3. So those are the 4 episodes. I liked Faith as a character. I enjoyed her arc overall between Buffy and Angel. And it's just a fine telling of the stories that we've seen on the show. So next up we have Straight On Till Morning by Christopher Golden. And this is about a kid named Kevin Murphy. It's his last summer before he's going to start high school. So he's hanging out with his friends, doing, summertime between junior high and high school stuff. He's got a crush on this girl named Nikki, but Nikki's got a new boyfriend named Pete Starling. Pete and his friends are going to steal Nikki away. And so Kevin Murphy's going to have to try to rescue her. And if you know anything about stuff, Straight On Till Morning should tell you where Nikki has been taken. So it's a take on... It's a horror version of Peter Pan, essentially. Early Christopher Golden. And an interesting story. Straight On Till Morning, Christopher Golden. Then, all right, so this book and 2 more that are going to come up, I have them right over there. But they are at the very, very bottom of a pile of, 40 books. And especially after last week's incident where I had a shelf collapse, I don't feel like digging those books out. But anyway, this book is Tarzan of the Apes by Edgar Rice Burroughs, the first Tarzan book. Do I even need to explain this to anybody? Young couple, pregnant wife, left on the coast of Africa. She gives birth. They're living in a treehouse. She dies. The dad dies. An ape, a female ape, has a baby that dies, so she takes the human baby, raises it as her own, becomes Tarzan, and this is technically the first half of a larger story, because Tarzan, some Jane and her father and some other people show up in Africa, interacting with Tarzan. I think Jane probably gets kidnapped. Tarzan rescues her, but he meets this guy who's French, and so this guy teaches French to Tarzan. So Tarzan's first human language is French. Um, he'll eventually learn English, but the guy is French. He's more comfortable teaching French. Uh, Everybody has left except for this guy and Tarzan. They're eventually going to make their way back to Europe. But way back when Tarzan was a little bitty baby, his dad was still alive and writing in a journal. Little baby Tarzan, John Clayton, stuck his hand in the ink and put his handprint in the journal. And so when they get back to England, they know from this journal, this is the handprint of the Greystokes baby, the Clayton baby. And so the French guy has it checked against Tarzan's handprint, and they realize he is John Clayton, Lord Greystoke. Of course, he's in love with Jane, but he decides that she and everybody else are better off without him in England. He's going to go back to Africa. And that's basically the end of Tarzan of the Apes. I love it. One of my favorite pulp novels, if not my favorite pulp novel of all time. Absolutely big fan. Followed that up, man, I'm all over the map in April of 2001. Followed that up with The First Salute by Barbara W. Tuchman. This is a non-fiction book about the Revolutionary War, and it's basically about France and Holland and how they helped the fledgling United States of America win the war. And the title, if I'm not mistaken, the title comes from the first time any foreign country acknowledged the flag of the United States. The first salute, essentially. So the first time, I think it was a ship bearing the flag of the colonies, was acknowledged for who they were as the colonies, not just some British rebels, whatever. Like it was either a ship from France or a ship from Holland. Acknowledged, yes, we're acknowledging you as a country of your own. But anyway, it's a fascinating, big, thick, but fascinating history. That's as it covers France and Holland's relationships with England itself, and then their relationship with the colonies, and how they helped with the war. And there's stuff about George Washington, of course, and Yorktown, whichever. Fascinating book. The First Salute by Barbara W. Tuchman. Then we have Prowlers by Christopher Golden, and I will admit to y'all, I didn't remember a single thing about this book. Basically, we've got this character, Jack Dwyer. His best friend is killed. He's devastated by that, but then his best friend comes back as a ghost and says, "Hey, buddy, there's prowlers coming." So this is not a werewolf novel, part of a series. The prowlers they hunt in packs, and they attack cities until people start getting too suspicious. Then they move on. But they're not werewolves. They're actually essentially canine monsters that disguise themselves as humans, if I remember correctly, and from what I read on Amazon. So, I mean, it's Christopher Golden. It's probably good. And it's something that I would be tempted to reread just to refresh my memory and see what I think. But again, no, I had no idea until I looked it up online No idea what this book was. And then we have The Return of Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs. So this is the second Tarzan book. And we kind of pick up where we left off. And there's, Tarzan still in love with Jane, but trying to be a good guy and step aside and let the guy who says he should be the heir to Greystoke kind of have Greystoke. And then there's a duel. And then I assume Jane gets kidnapped, taken back to Africa. It's been a while since I read it. But by the end, adventures, Tarzan has accepted that he is John Clayton, the Earl of Greystoke. I think it's the Earl of Greystoke. And he is with Jane. And this one has essentially a conclusion. So you take the first two books and it gives you this one big epic story that starts with the birth of Tarzan and ends with him accepting that he is the Earl of Greystoke and sort of living in two worlds now. The fancy world of London, and he's got an estate in Africa. Excuse me. Quite the eclectic group of books this month, because I followed that up with The Collected Stories of Philip K. Dick, Volume 2, We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, by Philip K. Dick, part of a series. Amazon says published by Citadel. I thought this was a White Wolf publishing project. Maybe. I don't know. But this is what it sounds like. Volume 2 of The Collected Stories of Philip K. Dick. We Can Remember It For You Wholesale was made into the movie Total Recall. It also includes, I wrote this down, where is it? The Adjustment Team, which was made into the movie The Adjustment Bureau, and Imposter, which was made into a movie called Imposter. And these three stories in particular, I think really highlight Philip K. Dick's fascination with loss of identity or not being sure of identity and what's necessarily your reality and what isn't. Of course, We Can Remember For You Wholesale. It's about a guy that you can go and have memories of a vacation put in your head. So instead of actually taking time off of work or whatever, you go to this place, they put these memories in your head, and you feel like you've had a week off or a month off or however long. Well, the main character decides to go for this Adventures on Mars thing, and then something may or may not go wrong, and he thinks that this procedure has unlocked real memories, that he's a secret agent, a sleeper agent. But again, with Philip K. Dick, is it just that he thinks these implanted memories that are supposed to be his little vacation memories are real, but they're not? And this is all just part of what they put in his head? Or did it really trigger the fact that he's a sleeper agent? You don't know. Imposter, I think, is the one where a doppelganger of this guy explodes. He's like, why the hell do I have a doppelganger and why did it explode? And he starts investigating, and a lot of crazy stuff happens there. The Adjustment Bureau, another reality bending thing. Anyway, Philip K. Dick, great stuff. And a nice collection of short stories with some classics. Then we have The Beasts of Tarzan. And again, I have all of these over there, but didn't want to dig them out. I'm afraid of another collapse. So in The Beasts of Tarzan, Tarzan, Jane, and their son Jack are in London. Tarzan decides to hop over to Africa for a little bit, visit a friend, but then he finds out that one of his nemeses is on the loose, and so he's going to go back to London, but I think Jane and Jack both get kidnapped, so Tarzan has to recruit some animals and save Jane and Jack. I don't think this is the one where he gets hit in the head and forgets that he's an English lord. But again, it's just great pulp action. Um, Getting a little repetitive. We don't want Jane kidnapped in every single story, but I do. I love the dichotomy of the character of Tarzan, that he could stand in the House of Commons and speak. I think he still speaks English with a slight French accent, but speak properly and lordly in a lordly manner. And then he's in the jungle in a loincloth, running around, uh, screaming and growling at animals, and just such a great character. But the books are a product of their time. Let's remember that. Excuse me. Then we have Dark Matter, If Whispers Call, by Don Basingthwaite. This is the second in the Dark Matter series, which is a very X-Files kind of thing. And um, there's a woman who's in an unexplainable coma, so the team from the Hoffman Institute are there to investigate. There's a cemetery. I think it probably has to do with ghosts. But an interesting series. Again, I think I mentioned it when I talked about the first one. Something I wouldn't mind finding and reading again. See if they stand up to like X-Files standards. The penultimate book for April of 2001 is Buffy the Vampire Slayer Doomsday Deck by Diane G. Gallagher. There's an art fair in Sunnydale. The Scooby Gang has been sort of roped in by Buffy's mom to help out. There's a young lady there named Justine, who has paintings. She does paintings of tarot cards, and she has a tarot deck and does readings. Everybody seems to gravitate towards her, but she freaks out when someone tries to touch her deck, and vampires seem afraid of her. Could she possibly be a bad guy? Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's going to be a bad guy. So, this is an original Buffy story, and Diana G. Gallagher, is a fine writer. It's a fun story. I like anything involving tarot, because tarot cards are cool. And I just played a little game myself in my little notebook. So when I'm writing down my notes in my beat up old falling apart notebook, I just put in the case of like pot shot, I just put pot shot. Zod Wallop, I put Zod. Just a little note so I know what I'm looking at. And this is the kind of stupid thing that amuses me to no end. For the Philip K. Dick book, I just put Dick. And then my notes. The Adjustment Team, Imposter. And then the next one that I made a note for was this Buffy book. And I put Deck. Dick Deck. I found that funny. Feel free to unsubscribe at this time. Anyway, I'm also a little loopy. So that was the penultimate book, Buffy the Vampire Slayer Doomsday Deck by Diana G. Gallagher. And the final book that I read in April of 2001 was No Cure for Cancer by Dennis Leary. And this is basically a written version of his off-Broadway one-man show. I think it was off-Broadway. But Dennis Leary, comedian and actor, maybe problematic now. Don't know. Haven't really heard much about or from him in a while. Just occasionally like rumblings like, ooh, Dennis Leary. But back in the day, thought he was pretty funny. One of those truth to power kind of guys. And so No Cure for Cancer, as I said, was just, he had a one-man off-Broadway show. This is the transcription of it, whatever you would call it. And I thought it was pretty funny. So that's it. That is what I read in April of 2001. And you know what? I thought ahead this time, so I have a question for this video. And that question is, see if I can actually make this a question that's understandable. What pop culture subject would entice you to read a pop culture and philosophy book? Maybe you're already a fan of philosophy. I don't know. But let's say, just for the sake of argument, let's say you're not. And I know a lot of people that aren't. I don't know many people that are. What pop culture subject would pique your interest? And you're like, you know what? I'm going to read that book. Um, I have so many in the library, it's difficult for me to answer this question. And I thought of the question, I didn't think of an answer. So I'm trying to think of what I would like to see in pop culture and philosophy. And just glancing over here, I happen to see some of my Godzilla trade paperbacks. I think that might be interesting, especially considering, the origins of the Godzilla movies, and then, there was a point when they were kids movies, and you could have essays or articles, whatever you want to call them, talking about the American version versus Japanese version and different philosophical viewpoints for how they're made or what they might be saying. So I think Godzilla would be interesting. There's a lot. Well, there's quite a few superhero ones, especially as more Marvel movies come out, DC movies come out. We get more of that. But I would like to see more obscure kind of things, characters, because I like obscure characters. There's actually a different publisher doing essays and things about characters, and they have a book on Moon Knight. But I don't know that their philosophy, they might, I'm not sure what they are because I haven't read it. But give me something, maybe like Marvel's Disney Plus's Marvel and philosophy, so they could talk about all the Disney Plus shows that Marvel has had, so they wouldn't have to focus on something really obscure. Like I'd love Howard the Duck and philosophy, something like that, or more horror based philosophy ones. They do have the undead in philosophy, Frankenstein philosophy, Dracula in philosophy, some of those, and the Walking Dead in philosophy. But I'd like to see more horror based. But what about you? What now? They do. I mean, they have books on TV shows, bands, video games, movies, some books, different things. There's one called The Devil in Philosophy that sort of looks at philosophically looks at the devil in different incarnations across different media. So it could be a movie or a movie series or TV show, books, anything at all. What subject? They even have baseball and philosophy, poker and philosophy. So what pop culture thing would get you to pick up a pop culture and philosophy book and give it a try? Let me know in the comments below, or just let me know if this is a horrible question. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections for me, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. And if you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is at Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. And if you're on Blue Sky, I am at EL Smith. That's all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.